Okay, what we want to do here is demonstrate some of the VLAN trunking protocol principles. What I've done up here, and I think what we're going to do is ports. We want to configure the ports as either access or trunk. That's one of the first things that we need to do. Create VLANs. Once we create the VLANs, then we need to assign them to ports. Assign the VLANs to the ports. Configure the virtual trunking protocol, and then we'll try to do the router on the stick. The VLANs that I want to use, interfaces 1 through 3, I want to be trunk ports, and I think that'll cover everything. I've already got this thing set up with the crossover cables connected, but they are not trunk ports yet because I haven't set them to. Packet Tracer does not do the automatic negotiation like the physical devices will. And you'll notice that spanning tree worked because I have this one block port, the 1 amber port here. What I'm going to do is interface 5 through 9, we'll do VLAN 10, interface 10 through 14, VLAN 20, interface 15 through 19, VLAN 30. I've assigned IP addresses to these things to the 192.168.10.20.30 networks. That's why I use VLANs 10, 20, and 30. Again, there's no requirement that you assign them that way, but it typically is easier to remember what's where that way. So the first thing we need to do, and we'll have to do it on all of these things, let's go to this first switch here and assign the ports to, well, actually, first of all, let's see if these things work. The command prompt, I should be able to ping 192.168.10. I use 2, 3, and 4, so I can ping that one. I should not be able to ping 192.168.20.3. True? Because I don't have a layer 3 device, and in fact, I can't ping them. So the workstations will communicate with each other right now. Now then, let's go back to our switches here and go to Enable Config T, and then I want to go to Interface Range INT, and you can type it out. Well, we'll just use the tab INT Range Fast Ethernet 0/1 space dash space, and you have to get this spacing correct or it'll give you an error. You have to do a space dash space. So I'm going to do 1 to 3, 1 through 3. And then what I want to do with this is switch port, mode, trunk. That's what we wanted to do with those, correct? We wanted to make 1 through 3 trunk ports. And now I can go to interface range, Fast Ethernet 0/5 through 9, and we're going to make that, actually I don't need to do that. Let's do this a little bit better because we're going to range Fast Ethernet 0/5 through 24. Since I don't want to go to each of those, I'm going to make all these access ports. Switch port, mode, access. They're now access ports. 1 through 3 on this switch are trunk ports. And if I go to show INT trunk, it says 1 and 3 because they're plugged in are in fact now trunk ports. The way you find which ports are trunk port, 2 is 2's not got anything connected to it. If I connected something to it, it'd be a trunk port. So if you want to find which ports are trunk ports, show interface trunk. If I want to see, and I should have done this first, I guess, show VLAN before we start assigning stuff to VLANs, everything is on VLAN 1, and that's the default VLAN. That's also the one that's going to be called the native VLAN. So everything initially is there. The next thing that I need to do is maybe let's create our VLANs. Want to do that? So we said we're going to do VLAN 10, so config config T VLAN 10, and now I can name it, what am I going to call VLAN 10? Let's call it students. And you know why I did it? Because you got to say name students. And now we can do VLAN 20 name. Let's make them faculty. Oh, you know why that did it? Why? Because you can only do one thing per line. And then VLAN 30 name. Let's call these guys admins.
Your class tonight, do you want it?
Name admin. So now if I do the show VLAN command spelled correctly, I have created the 3 VLANs. Let's do one other thing while we're here. Let's configure the VLAN trunking protocol and see if we can make these VLANs automatically go to the other switches. To do that, let's show VTP status to start with. And the VTP status says that we can create 255 VLANs. We have 8 existing VLANs, and that's because there are 5 by default. The ones that say FDDI and those, the big long ones, are there so that it meets a standard. They're not supported. And if we go back up here to the show VLAN, maybe go back up here to the show VLAN. The FDDI default, token ring, FDDI net, and TRNet says that they're active unsupported. That means that they're not there. Those VLANs are default VLANs. They're there so that the switches meet a standard. That's the only reason that they are there. So back down to here, we don't have a VTP domain name. So in order to do that, it's VTP domain after we get into config T, right? You notice that the tab key didn't work, and that should have been a hint to me that I was doing something wrong. Either it wasn't unique or I was in the wrong mode. So I'm going to do it all lowercase so that I don't make typos. VTP domain skyline. Change it from null to VTP status. Change it from null to skyline. You also notice up here the number of existing VLANs. Configuration revision, it says 0 configuration revisions on this thing. I think that if I had done that before I changed the domain name, it would have given me the other configuration revisions. So we have those. Let's go make a VLAN here, another. VLAN 40 would be the next one, right? Name is, let's say networkers. Name is networkers. Show VLAN. And we now have our 10, 20, 30, and 40 VLANs. So if I show VTP status, configuration revision 2, I've made some changes is what it's telling me. Now, in order to make these things go across, I've got to go to these guys, and the VTP information only goes across what kind of ports? 2 choices here. Huh? Pink or blue, trunking or access. So I need to go in and make the trunk ports, right? Show interface, do I have any trunk ports? Golly, 2 and 3 it says are already trunk ports. Why did that happen? And looky there. My VLANs are already there. How cool, huh? So it in fact did the negotiation. It wasn't supposed to, but it did the negotiation. That gives you the kind of an idea of what goes on with these access charges. Yeah, well, what goes on these things. Because I didn't go, did I make those trunks? Show VTP status. It says it's a member of Skyline. Configuration revision number, and that's the one I was talking about. If you come in with a switch with a higher configuration revision number, it says, oh, you know more than I do. I'm going to take your information. That's how we can destroy our network. If it's a server. Clients don't make changes to the physical content. They don't save the content. Clients get it out of memory so that if we reboot a client, for instance, then it's going to get all the information fresh every time. So we have these guys are trunk ports, we think. Now then, what I need to do is go in here and assign, if I can see these, so I got 5, 10, and 15, and I think that's what I did on all of them, just to try to keep them straight. We need to assign our VLANs to ports. And we have the subnets, the .10 on the 5-port, and I try to go across 10.2 down here, 10.4 here, and 10.3 up here. So now I need to go into my switch, config T, and we made all these guys access ports already, right? Config T, and let's go into INT range fast Ethernet 0, 5-9, and again you got to do the spacing correctly. And we're going to go to switch port access, and if we do the question mark VLAN, set the VLAN, and I think this is the one that is VLAN. And what do I want here? Huh? Nothing. This one's going to be VLAN 10, right? You got to get the spacing right, and I'm doing some of these because some of them I remember, some of them I don't remember. It'll tell you if you're wrong. So we did that VLAN 10. Now I can go into another range, INT range fast Ethernet, what, 10, 0/10 space dash 14, and then switch port access VLAN 30. Right? You guys are not helping. INT range fast Ethernet 0/15 space dash space 19, and now I can do switch port access VLAN 30 to see if I actually made the changes. I can go in here and find out that I didn't do it right, did I? 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are on VLAN 10, but VLAN 20 I've got a problem with, huh? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are on the wrong one. So how do I fix that? You weren't helping me. Config T, interface range, fast Ethernet 0/10-14, right? 14, switch port access, and what do I want this VLAN to be? 20, wasn't it? 20. Show VLAN. Okay, so I've got those there. I'm going to pause this recording while I configure the other switches with the same VLAN. So the VLANs, the port assignments are now configured on each of the switches, and should we be able to ping within our VLANs? Should we? I think we should. Let's see. So let's go back to this PC0, which was able to ping 10.3, and it can ping 10.3. Should it be able to ping 23 still? No, and it can't, because that's now on a different isolated broadcast domain. So we've got our ports assigned. Let's go back to the things that we were going to do. Ports, access, and trunk, we did that. We created the VLANs. We configured the virtual or the VLAN trunking protocol because it put all of the subnets, all of the VLANs on all the switches for us, did it not? You ready to help me out with the configuring of the router on a stick? What do you think? You ready to give it a shot? Let's go into this thing. Show IP interface brief. And I have fast Ethernet 00 unassigned. It's administratively down. It's shut down. So let's go into that thing. And let's just do, first we got to go config T, don't we? And let's do a no shut on it. So that brings the physical interface up. Now then, in order to keep these things straight, let's go and interface fast Ethernet 0/0 dot. What was my first VLAN? Was 10, right? 10. So this says config now. It says config sub interface. What I want to do with this thing is to first do encapsulation .1Q, which tells it to take the trunking information. So we'll do that, and then incomplete command. You know why it's an incomplete command? What does it got to know? Got to be what? We do the question mark, which VLAN. So this is going to be for VLAN 10, right? See why you may want to use the same number consistently throughout these things? And I configured the IP of the default gateway for these things as the .1. So under the IP address 192.168.10.1, 255.255.255.0, and no shut. Got to be careful how you do that, don't you? I'm going to go up and I'm going to config, so I can do INT fast Ethernet 0/0 dot. The next one was 20, right? The next interface that we used, .20. And it says that it's up and we have a sub interface. And you notice that you can use the up arrow key. So let's tell this one, instead of being on VLAN 10, let's put it on VLAN 20. And now the IP address, since I'm lazy, is going to be .20.0.1. 20.0. 20.0 would be the network address, right? Okay, so let's go to interface fast Ethernet 00.30. That was our third subnet, wasn't it? And now, what did it tell me? That we're there. So .1Q, and I should be able to use the 30 VLAN. And now then, do you see how much faster the up arrow key makes a lot of these continue, the ones that you just do over and over and over? You know what I forgot to do on these, although it may not? Let's do a show IP interface brief. Says that they're all up. I wonder if I can ping 192.168.10.1. I should be able to ping all of these, right? 20.1, 30.1. Now here's where it's going to get a little dicey. I'll say a little dicey because I've had some issues making this one actually work. I don't want to go to the router. I want to go to PC 0. Can ping 20.3. Should be able to do that, shouldn't it? Timed out. There we go. Just took it a few seconds there. So I can now ping the 20.3. I have configured VLANs on the switches, configured the VLANs to pass the tagged information, configured the router, and that is called a router on a stick when you see this thing. The other way that you can configure these things, a router on a stick really has some issues. Now, it's going to slow things down. Could get saturated because all your traffic's got to go up that one interface and come back. One interface and come back. Single point of failure. If you use layer 3 switches, you can create virtual interfaces by just doing INT VLAN 20, 10, 20, 30, put an IP address on it and invoke routing on those, and you don't have to go through all of that stuff. So have we done all the things that we wanted to do to start with? We did the ports. We made ports access ports and trunk ports. And our trunk ports obviously worked because we went from this switch down here to another one. I guess we could actually go to, let's try 20.4, which would be on a different switch entirely. 20.3 actually was on a different switch too, wasn't it? I don't want a 20.3 again. Let's try 20.4. We get the timeout. I guess the issue is I don't know that I've got all these. There we go. We're pinging. So do our trunk ports work? Would you say our trunk ports work? Just based on the fact that we are getting from one network to the other. So we got the trunk ports, the access ports we configured. We created the VLANs to create those domains. We configured the VLAN trunking protocol. We saw that when it sent the VLANs that we created on one switch to the other switch. Once we had the trunk ports and had the domain, you've got to have a VTP domain name. We looked at where the configuration number is, and I'll go back through that. And the reason I'm going through that, this is the configuration number is one that you're going to have to kind of pay attention to. The configuration revision number is 2 on all these things. If I brought a switch in here that had a configuration revision of 3 and it were a server, it would then change all the configurations. If I want to change any of these things, we can go operating mode. Let's say we wanted to make this guy a client. We go to config T VTP, and then the options are domain mode, and then we can be client, server, or transparent. Client, show VTP status, it's now a client. We can't make, and let's just go through the one other thing, config T VLAN 60. VTP VLAN configuration not allowed when the device is in client mode. So if you try to create a VLAN on a client, it gives you an error message that says that you can't do it. So we covered all of the configurations that we talked about during the lecture that we wanted to do. Yes, no, maybe? Which didn't we do? I think we've configured that. I know that's a... And this is recorded if you want to go back and watch it. I know this is kind of going through relatively fast.